So I'm getting ready to conclude all of this and tie this up. Thank you so much for your indulgence and me sharing the story, because I probably won't share this in this depth, in this detail. But like I said in the first episode, I never had an opportunity to share in depth like this, and I felt that he was deserving of me doing so. And again, so I could help somebody else with their journey. So, excuse me, after seeing him and realizing that he was not alive, I called my mom. I didn't call the police right away, which is so interesting, but I called my mother, and I, obviously was crying, and I told her he's gone. Oh gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm tired. Been taping a lot today. But I said, he's gone, mom, he's gone, whatever. And I don't remember all of what she said, but I do remember her saying, did you call the police? I mean, somebody would be like, oh, you didn't call your police? For like, this is unprecedented for me. You don't know what to do in that moment. Like nothing, from that point on, nothing made sense for me. Nothing, like there was no logic. There was nothing. Like from that point on, it was like I was in a fog as to how I was moving. And so I was like, no, but I'll call now. And I got off the phone and I called, and the police station was literally right down the street from our house. It just seemed like it took them forever to get there. And so once I called them, I remember going and sitting in the corner on the floor. I'm sorry, I just had a visual of that. Sitting in the corner on the floor, looking at him on the bed in total disbelief that my life, in a matter of, for me at that time, in a matter of moments, changed. Like my entire life changed. Like it wasn't, I didn't feel like it was over, but my entire life was never, ever, 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 ever going to be the same. And I was just trying to get my mind around that. It just didn't make sense. I'm like, what? Like, how did this happen? How did we get here? And this way, like, as much as I love the arts and I love murder mysteries and television and detective shows and all that stuff like that, soap operas back in the day, this is the kind of stuff you see on TV. Like, this should not be my life. That's how I felt. Like, no, even saying that, I don't know if there is a way that I would have preferred for it to be, except to say I was grateful that he didn't die in the street somewhere, or he didn't, like, we lived in the mountains, so he could have been on the road. His car could have gone up to a cliff. Like, there were so many other possibilities that I was thankful did not happen. In that moment, in the days following, that's where I allowed my mind to be about how grateful. Y'all hear me say, find something to be grateful for, right? Even in that moment, I was just finding the things to be grateful for, that finding, being grateful for the life that we had together. Of course, it hadn't really completely resonated with me what really life was going to be like. But I was just sitting there like, what in the world is this? I don't like it, of course. So I'm sitting in the corner, and it felt like forever. It took them forever to get there. So I'm hearing the sirens come down the street, and I jump up and I go running downstairs out of the house so I can tell them what house it was. And, they come in behind me. I run back upstairs and I get back in the corner. It was like a little kid, if you've ever seen a little kid like sitting in the corner with their knees up against their chest, and they have their arms around, their knees, and they're just sitting there like not being able to do anything. And that was what it was. And I remember this police officer coming in, and sometimes, I don't know, the work that they do, I guess they've seen this kind of stuff so many times. Like even when I watch like Law and Order and stuff like that, you'll hear them, they're so removed, right? They're so desensitized to the feeling of what's happening in that moment. They're emotionless almost. And I think maybe kind of disconnected and insensitive to the actual person that's actually experiencing this in real time. And so one of the officers comes in, or I think he was one of the police officers, but in any case, the guy comes in and he says, "Oh yeah, he's been stale for a while." I think he's been stale for a while, something to that nature. And I was like, why would you make that statement? Like, could you have had a little more couth? I mean, it didn't matter either way. It was the truth, and I didn't realize to what degree he was making his statement. So the coroner gets there. The police officers had told me that when the coroner got there, I was going to have to leave the room because they would have to examine the body and all that kind of stuff. And so by this point, again, I'm still home alone. My mom, my aunt Alfreda, and my uncle Tom, who, again, yet another person I'm mentioning who's no longer with us in this physical realm. But my mom, my uncle Tom, my aunt Frida, and my aunt Elaine made their way up to Pennsylvania. I didn't really have anybody up there at the time, like in terms of family that lived close. My godmother, I call her my godmother. She's my mom, one of my mom's best friends from back in the day, and I call her Auntie Carrie. Her and her husband lived up there, but they lived like 30 minutes away from me. So I don't know if my mom called her or called them or I called them, but they came to be with me until my mom got there. Because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, there's nobody like having your mom there if your mom is that person for you, or having your parent there to, you just want to put your head in their chest and cry, or for them to hug you and just try to help you navigate through whatever is going to be next. And thankfully I have my mom, but not just my mom, my aunts. My family is very close, so that's, how we function. And my uncle, and he and Kenny, they were close. They, he loved them. And now they're together. But the police officers told me when the coroner got there, I'd have to leave the room, and I left when she did get there, or they got there. So I went and sat in my office, the same office that I mentioned earlier, and I saw that picture that I talked about. And I thought back to when the picture fell, and how in that moment, like I said, I didn't really give it much thought, but I remember there being like this fleeting feeling of, okay, what was that about? And I believe, again, on a spiritual level, I don't believe in coincidences. Let me say that, just in case I've never said that. I don't. I believe in signs, and I believe there are things in ways that spirit, God, our creator, tries to communicate with our spirit and let us know certain things. I happen to know that I have the gift of the word of knowledge as one of the gifts, giftings that I have been blessed with. The gift of the word of knowledge is one of them. And I actually learned that through an experience I had, and I won't go into that now, but an experience I had, God, I was in my 20s, and I didn't have an understanding of what I was experiencing at the time. But it was basically foreknowledge of someone passing away, or that they had passed away, but I didn't have the information in the natural. And that has happened many, many times since that time. So I'm learning now how to pay closer attention to things like that, like signs and different things like that, where I believe God could be trying to get our attention, or get information to us through discernment. That is another gift. The gift of discernment is another spiritual gift. But yeah, I try to be more mindful and pay more attention, because I felt like in that particular situation with Kenny, I believe that there were some things that I missed. But I won't get into that. But yes, so the picture falling, in retrospect, I believe that was a sign of him, falling to death, or, his life being lifeless or whatever. And again, I'm not beating myself up about it, but it just is my reality. So I'm sitting in the office, and I'm sitting there, and I'm kind of realizing, I'm like, you know what? I think, they always say that the first person on the scene, right, is considered the suspect. So I'm like, I hope they're not treating me like a suspect, but I'm more than likely, because I'm the spouse, right? And they had to determine why he died, or how he died. So that was the realization that I had. It was really weird. And then eventually, I go downstairs. Auntie Carrie gets there. I go downstairs, and I'm there with her and her husband, Craig. And I think it was complete, utter silence. Like, I don't think we were talking. Like, there was honestly nothing to talk about. There was nothing to say. I'm supposed to get on a prayer call. Sorry. But there was nothing to say. But they were there, which goes back to, or in my book, I talk about, like, a lot of times people don't know what to say when you're grieving. They don't know what to say. So sometimes they don't say anything at all, which is okay. Cause it's okay to just sit there and be there. It's okay to not have anything to say. It's okay, to sit in the silence. It is okay. Sometimes it's better to just sit in the silence and so the person just knows you're there, as opposed to try to make them laugh, or try to fabricate something to say, And it's okay sometimes to say, I don't know what to say, but I just want you to know I'm here for you, or whatever. And that was what they were for me. They were just there, and I'm grateful. I am very, very grateful. And that was not my first time, like, being around them since I lived in Pennsylvania. I had obviously gone to their house times before. So we indeed had a relationship. I'd known her again since I was a kid. And then my mom and them arrived, and we just sat downstairs in the living room, just trying to process. Again, I think for me, I was getting ready to say something, but I think for me, it's a very unique, for me, situation. It could have happened any other way. Like, he could have been sick and died in a hospital. He could have had a car accident. It could have happened so many ways, but God saw fit to have him go at home, and for me to find him. And I've always believed that God allows things to happen to us, or with us, for a reason. And many times it's not only, it's not so much for us as much as it is for the people whose lives we touch, and are supposed to help. And so that's, again, how Good Grief started. I wanted to share. It was like a journal, like just sharing the experience of it, because, it's one thing for your husband to pass away. right? And, or you to lose a child, or you to lose anybody for that matter. It's one thing for someone to die and you got to deal with that, you know. And people are like, what's better, if someone died suddenly or someone died and they were sick? I don't even compare. I don't put any weight or a scale on loss, because loss is loss. Loss is loss. And I don't know that I would have wanted Kenny to be sick and die. You understand what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, loss is loss. It hurts either way. It hurts either way. But the reality of it is, because it did happen so suddenly, there are people that die suddenly and you're not there, right? I wasn't there when he passed, but I did have to come home and find him. That's traumatic. That was traumatic. So but God allowed that to happen. I believe so because he knew that I would be okay and I would be able to handle it. And what I believe God is so amazing, because what I do believe is that he knew that I would not be able to properly handle or deal with if he had passed away and I was home. Because like I said, any given weekend, I was only leaving that morning, that Saturday morning. But this particular weekend, I left on a Friday. So if he was in distress in any way, and we live in Pennsylvania and away from our families, and there's nothing that I could do to save him, I don't think I would have been able I don't think I would be okay. You don't know. You never know, right? But I don't think I would be okay. I had someone say to me, and I think I might have said this before, I know you wish you had been up there with him. And I think the person meant well. I think they were thinking, oh, he died alone. I know, you wish you hadn't come down here and you would have been there with him if it had happened. And my response to them was like, no, it happened exactly the way God intended for it to happen. And that is my belief. And so once my mother and them got there, the coroner was there. They told us we could come up. My mom, I didn't want to go up again until I had to. So my mom went up. She said her goodbyes. I think my aunt and them, they went up. I don't think my uncle went up. He didn't want to see him. And that was it. And then I went upstairs and then went at, before they asked me, did I want to, see him before they took him out of the house. And so I did go upstairs. And when I went upstairs, his arm wasn't up anymore. And, the coroners have to do what they have to do to begin to prepare the body for the funeral home to come pick it up. And the funeral home, the local funeral home came to pick it up because I was going to have him buried down here in New Jersey so that his family could visit the burial site if they wished to. There was no sense in me keeping him up in Pennsylvania. And he was going to also be, eulogized down in New Jersey at his home church. So it didn't make sense for me to keep him up there, but the local funeral home had to come and get the body. And so I went upstairs and I noticed that they had to bring his arm down. They had to break his arm to bring it down. I'm sorry for the graphics if that made someone feel, uncomfortable, but that's ultimately what they had to do. They had to break his arm to bring it down so that it can lay flat here, across his chest, across his, stomach, or however they pulls the body for burial. And I said my goodbyes, and I was upset because the funeral home had brought, the gurney, and they had the body bag ready, for him. and but because he was upstairs, they couldn't take the gurney upstairs. And so they had to bring him downstairs, on our bedroom comforter. And I was so angry. I remember being so angry about that, to the point where I have a girlfriend who is a funeral director now. At the time, she was studying to be a funeral director. And I asked her, I'm like, is that normal? Like, I was angry. I was angry because that was the bed that we shared. That was our bedroom comforter, and they were going to take it. And why didn't you cover him up? And, I was just angry. I don't know if I needed to find something to be angry about. I don't know. But I was angry. I was like, I don't like that. Like, why didn't you cover him up? That was how I felt then. But they brought him down. That was the only way that they could get him downstairs. Because they couldn't take the gurney up. So they brought him down, and then they placed him in the body bag. And then he began his journey to his final resting place. My aunts and my mom immediately went upstairs and began to turn over my bedroom. They stripped that bedroom, like cleaned up stuff. Actually, I'm so sorry. Let me rephrase. My aunt Alfreda did that. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, was my aunt Elaine there that night? I'm not sure, but I know she was there the next time we went. So my Aunt Frida, yeah, I think she was there. But yeah, I think she was there. But anyway, my Aunt Frida went up and she turned that bedroom over and started putting Kenny's clothes away. And I'm saying this to say they began forward motion immediately, which for me helped me to continue to move forward. This was a new normal for me. That was going to be it. That was going to be it. I was going to now have this life without this man who I have been married to, who I've been in a relationship with and in a relationship with since 1998. And now this man is no longer in the world, like no longer physically in this physical realm. I'm never going to see him again. And my brain couldn't process that. It just none of that made sense to me. Never, ever. Like, it was almost like, well, that's irrelevant, but my brain just couldn't process that. And the fact that they began to like clean up the house and I wasn't staying there. There was no way. Nope. I knew they weren't going to be able to stay there with me. And I could not take being in the house where we shared our life together. And it was just me and him. Our daughter lived in Jersey after she graduated college. And so I couldn't imagine being there, sleeping in that bed without him. I couldn't take it. Like, I know me. I know how I think. There wasn't any question. I was not staying there. And so I grabbed clothes, more clothes. And then they did enough for the night. Put some things in the washer, in the dryer and stuff like that. I think we stayed until the load of laundry that my Aunt Frida had done was complete. And then we left. And I went down and I stayed at my mom's. And, you'll often hear me talk about, as I said earlier, spiritual experiences and spiritual connection. And when you're connected spiritually, it doesn't even have to be by way of death. It could be like me. It happens with me and my daughter often. My dad refers to it as, oh gosh, I don't remember the term, or if there's a term for it, but he does refer to it as the connection between a parent and a child and how we respond to things. Like, a lot of times we say some of the same things. We finish each other's sentences. It happens a lot. It happens a lot. Like, we'll react the same way. Like let's say something happens and my response is hers will be literally at the same time in the same moment. Like and it happens often. My dad happened to notice that when we were all together down in Denver last year, and something happened. He was like, "Oh, that's that parent-child connection." That's what it was, parent-child connection. So that's a spiritual thing, I believe, because you know how you hear people say things like they knew that their child had died because they could feel in their spirit. That I believe is very real, but I think that can happen with not just parent child and husband and wife. I think that can happen with friends as well. And my dear friend Leon Brown, I he at the time was a musician at our church, and him and our friend Tim, we're all born in the same month. And we've always had this like connection since we met. We would do birthdays together for years, while, we were with the Harlem Gospel Choir, and even after, until Tim moved away. And, when Tim came back, we would go. And now both of them are gone. So we have to probably do a Zoom thing for our birthdays in next month. We're going to have to do something. I don't know. But I'm just saying all that to say there have been times over the years between the two of them where I would pick them up in the spirit, or they would pick me up in the spirit, or especially with Tim and I, we would literally be thinking the same thing and make a statement, not knowing that the other person was thinking the same thing, or not knowing that the other person had said the same thing, or whatever. Happened more often than not, and it was weird. It was just weird. But again, we're spirit beings having an earthly experience, so my natural mind might not understand it, but the spirit realm is very real, and the spirit connection is very real. And so literally, I can't recall if it was after my mom and them got there. I remember sitting on the couch with them. I remember calling my girlfriend Coretta, who was the funeral director now. At the time, she wasn't. But I remember calling her to tell her Kenny had passed away, and asking her to tell all the girls. I believe that that's how that played out. And immediately she said to me, "Where are you?" I said, "I'm still in Pennsylvania." "Okay, as soon as you hit Jersey, let me know. We're on our way. We'll be on our way." And I'll speak about that in a few minutes, about community, and how important it is to have community, whether you're experiencing loss by way of death, whether you're experiencing loss by way of losing a job or a relationship, or any type of loss. Community is so important. You could think that you need, let me say this, there are times we do want to be alone, to just experience whatever we're experiencing alone. But there are times that we need to be with other people. There are times we need to be with other people. So I'm going to put a button in that for a second. But back to Leon, again, part of my community. I called Coretta, talked to her. I said, okay. And that was pretty much the gist of the calls I had planned to make. Like, who's immediately calling, like, their friends? Like, who's calling, like, making phone calls that day to say this, that, and the other happened? And it's interesting because I don't even know why. I don't know. I don't even know why I called Coretta and didn't wait to Jersey. I don't know. But I called out. I called her because of the blanket thing, right? Because I was angry. But after I got off the phone with Coretta, my phone rang. And it was Leon. Leon never, and then when I say never, never, I've known Leon since 2011. He started playing for my church. I don't know, maybe like 2012, and had been playing for our church until the pandemic hit. So that's how long he had been around. And all of the years that he played for Highway, my church, he never called me Saturday evening. Never. Not for anything. Not for anything. We would generally talk during the week, if that, or just see each other on Saturdays, and then might shoot a text or something like that through the week. But never did he call me on Saturdays. He called me that Saturday night, and it was late, because you have to understand, when I got to Kenny, it was 9:00. I left that out. It was 9:00 by the time I got to Kenny. So, after finding the body and dealing with the police getting there and the coroner getting there and waiting for my mom to get there, and all of that time had passed, I called Coretta and my phone rings, and it had to be close to 11. And it was Leon. And he was like, I picked you up. He was like, as I picked you up in the spirit, some things, are you okay? And I said, no, I'm not. I'm not okay. And I told him, Kenny passed away. And he's like, sis, oh my God, I'm sorry. And again, I say that to say spirit connection is so real. And paying attention to that is very key. And if he ever had an opportunity to share that story, he might not even remember. Lee, I'll be forgetting stuff. I love him so much. He might not even remember that. It was, in 2016, and a lot has happened, and life has happened, since. He's gotten 2 more children, since then. And so, yeah. So the coroner determined that Kenny, again, had a heart attack, but that he had been gone for 9 hours, she said. Did she say 9 hours? 12. I'm sorry, 12 hours. 12 hours. From the time that and I don't remember the time of death. I would have to look at the death certificate. She said 12 hours. So if she came at again, I don't know the time of death, but 12 hours. So you're putting it at the morning time, right? So just in that moment, I knew he had been gone all of that time, for the most part, that I was waiting for him to call. And it wasn't until I actually got his phone, and I traced tried to trace his steps, or at least create some type of timeline from the last call that was in on his phone. And it was it was that morning, I think at 5-ish, 5:30. And he had been on the phone with his mom for a second or so. Yeah. No, I'm so sorry. It had been the call to work, I think, to tell them, or somebody from his job, to say that he wasn't gonna make it to work. And then the next call at 5:30 was a missed call from his mom. So somewhere after that first call at around 5-ish, by 5:30, I believe he was gone. Either he was gone, or he didn't answer the phone because he just didn't feel like talking. I don't know. That's my deduction. But in any case, by some point of that morning, he did pass away and transition. And yeah. So, we left when